it's not going to be easy. I think for them, it starts up front with their pass rush, with Watt and everyone else. And they get after the quarterback, and they don't have to blitz a lot. They can do it with 4 guys because they're really special. And then with that pass rush creates issues that you have to try and find windows that they've got some ball hawking secondary guys. And so this defense is really, really good. I mean, they played 2 really good offenses.
Hi everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to the Matchup Show presented by Power Home Solar. I am Missi Matthews and we have a star-studded panel today to break down the Steelers versus the Texans Sunday at Heinz Field, 1 p.m. Joining us for the first time ever this season is Merril Hoge, former Steelers player. Glad to have you with us, Merril, as always. Also, former Steelers outside linebacker Arthur Moats is once again on hand. A lot to talk about in terms of defense today on both sides, Arthur, and a first-timer as well, Bob Pompeani from KDK TV, the host of the Mike Tomlin Show, and much more. So, Pomp, thanks for being here as well. And, guys, this is 2-0 for the Steelers, 0-2 for the Texans. They have played at Kansas City. They have played the Baltimore Ravens. So fair to say their record doesn't mean exactly what is on paper. So I want to start by asking you, and Merril, we'll start with you. Which matchup on Sunday do you think favors the Steelers the most?
Well, the Texans have really struggled in their passing game. They're trying to find some consistency and some rhythm, and they have not found that. They struggle with pass protections with their offensive line and their backs, even their quarterback's wide receiver combination. About everything that could go wrong in the passing game has gone wrong for the Texans. And what is the one thing that the Steelers have been absolutely terrific at? Disguising, timing, and pressuring and getting after the quarterback. So it'll be a daunting task. I always try to remind people, never underestimate a professional, when they've been embarrassed and they're not playing well. They're going to be working on that. But the way the Steelers are playing on that perspective, I just think it will be too much for the Texans this week.
All right, Arthur, which matchup do you think favors the Steelers on Sunday?
For me, I think it's the Steelers wide receivers against this Texans secondary. When you look at the talent that the Steelers have in these first 2 games from a receiver standpoint, Chase Claypool has emerged. He's showing that he's a very valuable and consistent deep threat. Deontay Johnson, when he has the ball in his hands, his making this ability, he's electric. And we can go down the list in terms of the tight ends as well. We know that is one of the strengths of the Steelers offense. But when you look at that Texans secondary, Bradley Roby, he's a good player. And I feel like they do have good players back there, obviously with Vernon Hargreaves, Justin Reed, and Eric Murray. But I just don't think that they have the personnel that really matches up with this Steelers wide receivers, and especially having been back there in this pinpoint accuracy.
All right, Pomp, is there a matchup on Sunday that you'll be keeping a close eye on?
Well, I like what Merril said earlier about the fact that there's a team like the Houston Texans allowing as much pressure as they have up front, Missy, and the Steelers bringing it as much as they have from so many different angles. But I'm going to go in another direction there as well, and I think until the Texans receivers prove that they can be in this offense and be at least something close to what DeAndre Hopkins has been, and that's a tall task because he's off to a great start in Arizona. That trade continues to be analyzed and reanalyzed, but they have named guys back there, and they haven't been able to get in the end zone yet. So I think the Steelers secondary against Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller, even though those guys are capable, Randall Cobb, they have names, but I want to see those names in action and the chemistry between Deshaun Watson and those guys. And until they develop it, I think the Steelers secondary may have an advantage there.
If you have not heard, I'm sure you have, it is Watt Week here. For the first time, all 3 brothers, the Watt brothers, JJ, TJ, and Derek, will be playing in the first game. TJ and Derek have played together at all 3 levels. This is actually the first time that these 2 you see here, TJ Watt and JJ Watt, will be going against each other. So, of course, since we have the Watt that's 2-0, we had to, do a little side-by-side of their stats. 4 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and an interception for TJ. JJ not far off, 5 tackles and 2 sacks. So, Merril, I'll start with you. What do you think this means for these brothers who are pretty much competitive in just about everything?
Well, listen, I got a brother that's a year younger than me, and we played together all through Little League, junior high, high school, and even in college. He was a quarterback, and all our running backs got hurt, and they moved him back to running back. And I'm going to just tell you this, and starting in 4 years of college, the thing I remember the most is when he and I played together. So or played against each other. So I could just imagine that all three of them together on the same field, even though they're not on the same team, is a great experience for the entire family, and one I'm sure that none of them will forget.
Arthur, you know TJ. You know how quiet he is, how much he hates being JJ's little brother, probably Derek's little brother as well. What do you think this means to TJ in particular?
Man, this is a huge opportunity for TJ. It's funny, you talk about him not liking to be, called JJ's little brother. I remember when he first came to the team, that's what we would call him at first. And then from there, it started to become, you're Big Watt now, just trying to build him up and let him know that, man, you can be just as big or bigger than what JJ has become. And when you look at this matchup, man, this is going to be one of those opportunities where he's going to get the chance to say, I went head to head against my brother and I outperformed him, because I do think that TJ's matchup against Titus Howard is a lot more favorable for him compared to JJ Watt when he's going to be going up against Chuks Okorafor and some of the other guys along this offensive line. I just look at that, man, for TJ and saying, man, you're going to get this opportunity to have real life bragging rights. It's different when, you're playing against Derek Watt last year. Derek's a fullback, special teams guy. It's not really the same emphasis in terms of the impact on the game. But now him going against JJ, same game, he's really going to get the chance to have that real bragging rights.
Now, Pomp, I went through JJ Watt makes up about 15% of the Texans' all-time sacks. That's pretty daunting there. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. We saw what TJ was able to do, almost getting that award last year. He's only sacked Ben Roethlisberger once. I know they don't play all the time, but what have you seen from JJ just through these first 2 games?
I mean, there's not much difference. I think J.J. Watt's going to be at the end of the year if he's healthy, and that's been a big concern for him, Missy. He's going to be one of the more dominant players. But I think this rivalry, this sibling Sunday, if you will, is going to be fascinating. And, Derek's getting no love here. So I wouldn't be surprised if Derek's going to figure in the game plan a little bit. And I know those competitive juices will flow. He's been really good, I think, in special teams. A nice block on the Connor 59-yard run. They haven't used him all that much. And but as far as JJ is concerned, what can you say? The man is royalty at what he does. And I think his little brother, TJ, is going to rise up to the occasion. He has been outstanding. I think he's the best in the game right now, and that includes his brother. So I'm anxious to see how this works out. But I think TJ is going to have a nice day. All
right, Pop, I'll give some love to all three. They all had a tackle for loss last week in week 2 for their respective teams. Sorry, Arthur, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, and then also I did like the fact you shout out Derek and his special teams work, because he did get the safety last week as well. So I looked at that. I'm like, you know what? They're all three contributed in some form or fashion. So I like that a lot.
All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break here on the Matchup Show. When we return, we have some fan questions we will get to. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Steelers official mobile app is your window into your favorite team. Behind-the-scenes access.
Oh, man, he is just running so hard.
Live audio, including game broadcasts.
That's what you call smart football.
Statistics. Press conferences and interviews. And Steelers Nation Unite exclusive access and benefits. That's all in the Steelers official mobile app. Download it for free today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Matchup Show. We are continuing to preview Steelers and Texans Sunday, 1 o'clock, right here at Heinz Field. And Merril, I'll start with you again. I know we talked about the fact the Texans have not won a game yet, but we know who they've played, Kansas City and Baltimore. If you go back to 2019, you can say 2 of the best teams in the league and, of course, the AFC. So what do you think they are going to be bringing here from what you've seen the first 2 weeks to Heinz Field, trying to get that first win?
Well, one thing that they have been unable to do, actually, on both sides of the ball, they've been able to really establish their running game and be consistent there. That has been really in flux for them. And they really haven't been able to stop the run, and that's really what's gotten them into their issues. Now, I'm sure they'll watch the tape. They'll do some things that Denver did early on offensively. The Steelers defense had some problems with a lot of the zoom motions and the jet motions. Linebackers were being pulled out of the box, and run fits weren't there. That's why a lot of the big runs occurred early. So they will try to sprinkle those things in, and if they can assemble that, then I think they can get their passing game going. But they've got issues, across the board. It's not just their passing game. Their running game hasn't really helped, and their run defense hasn't been very good. So, they got challenges on both sides they have to clean up and get better in order to get it back on track and beat the Steelers.
Arthur, what do you think has been their biggest problem through the first 2 weeks?
For me, it looks like just their red zone efficiency. Watching them on tape against the Ravens, I thought that they still had some success moving the ball, but a lot of their drives, once they got into the high red zone area, the 30, 35-yard line, they just couldn't execute. I know what they have typically been trying to do is feature their tight ends in that area, but I guess it's because the field's getting condensed. They're not able to utilize it the way they want to. But that, to me, is the biggest thing that jumps off the screen in terms of their communication. Merril hit on it. They do a lot of pre-snap movements and motions and things like that, and we've seen our defense struggle a little bit with that from a communication standpoint. So that definitely presents some challenges, but overall, I think this is still a game from a defensive standpoint that the Steelers, if they're playing up to their potential, it shouldn't present too many challenges for them.
Now, Pomp, Coach Tomlin said going against Deshaun Watson is a ridiculous challenge. What do you think the Steelers defense will do in terms of trying to stop his mobility?
Well, I think containing him, Missy, is the most important thing. I mean, the Steelers have had experience last year with Lamar Jackson, and I think at home they did a pretty good job keeping him where he had to be, and it led to some interceptions, turnovers, and I think that's been a problem right now for the Texans. But it's a tough assignment. This is going to be the most difficult team they've played so far, and I think a desperate team is a tough team to play. So I would expect that even though the Steelers want to go after Deshaun Watson, that's been their strength so far, I don't know if I'm going to do it as aggressively at start, at least, because I want to make sure that I keep him where he has to go. He has that ability to break plays, and I think that's what Mike Tomlin was talking about being ridiculous to contain him. If you allow him to get out, he will make plays and burn you deep.
All right, guys, as I said, we do have some fan questions, so we want to get to a few of them for a chance for you guys to answer them. This first one is from Heather. She wants to know what area of the Houston defense you think the Steelers offense can attack and be successful. Arthur, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for me, it's one of the matchups I talked about in terms of what I'm looking forward to in this game, and it's our wide receivers against their secondary. Like I said, they have players back there, but I just don't think that they're of the same caliber of our Steelers wide receivers. I think that this Steelers passing attack is just starting to scratch the surface in terms of how good they can be. We've seen some really good connections between Ben and these receivers that he's new with, but we've also seen them not on the same page or not executing to the same degree that we're accustomed to. So for me, I just look at it as this is another opportunity for them to continue to get in-game, in-stadium experience together, and that's only going to continue to build their rapport and ultimately build their productivity.
All right, let's jump ahead to our next fan question. We had several submitted, so thanks again to our fans. Merril, this one is from you. It is from Gordon. He said, what will the potential return of Dave DeCastro add to the Steelers running game? And for the record, Dave DeCastro was a full participant once again today, so that's 2 days in a row. As Coach Tomlin would say, I think his arrow is pointed up, Merril.
Well, listen, when you get experience like that and consistency back into the lineup, it only helps. And it doesn't just help in the running game. Quite honestly, it'll help in their passing game. Last week, here's what I think they did a better job of last week. And it really wasn't on the offensive line. It was more on James Conner. As a runner, an offensive line they have their hands full, but when you have a point of attack at the run, a back's responsibility is to attack that area and be consistent in that area and be a decisive runner. And James in the first week was not that decisive runner. He was last week. And you saw at the end of the game what that eventually produced into, that big run. People said, well, he got most of his yards at the end of the game, which is true. But it's how he ran during the game that put him in a position for that. Now, it was blocked beautifully. You don't want to take away that. But that's what you have to do as a runner. You have to complement what they're doing up front. And that may mean only getting a yard or two. But what eventually happens is you break the dam. It's a crack here and a crack here, and eventually you break the dam is what they did. If they keep doing that and add to Castro, this running game will be more consistent. It's going to be more dangerous, and it's going to be more effective.
All right, and since it's Watt week, that was Derek Watt who helped him on that 59-yard run. Our last fan question, Pomp, this one is for you, and it comes from Linda. She says, the Texans' run defense hasn't been great in its first 2 games. Do you predict another 100-yard rusher for the Steelers?
Well, hello, Linda. Actually, It's funny. We sit here and sometimes critique the run game, and Benny Snell had a fumble last week. That's not good. One the week before. That's not good. James Conner's, average prior to that 59-yarder, not that good. But, hey, 2 games, 2 100-yard individual efforts. There's a lot of positive to this. I think what Merril was saying, eventually that kind of stuff keeps coming. So, yes, I would expect that. I also would expect the run game to be effective early, setting up the tight end game. And I expect Eric Ebron, who's had some of his better games against the Texans, and people are wondering, what role does he have here? You may see him explode on the scene, at least more so this week than in previous weeks, Missy.
All right, guys, thanks for answering those questions. Thanks to our fans for submitting them. We have time now for just one more break. When we return, I'll get your key to the game for Sunday. We'll be right back. Everybody, welcome back to the Matchup Show. It is time now for our keys to the game presented by your neighborhood Ford store. All right, guys, getting closer to kickoff. Merril, you are up first. What is your one key to the Steelers getting a win on Sunday against the Texans?
Well, Missy, this is going to be, it might be a cliche, if you will, but in the last 2 weeks in watching the entire league, it has been very evident about teams that have won and played well versus teams that have not played well and played bad. It has all been about how well they play in the trenches, the offensive line and the defensive line. And when I look at that and I look at this matchup with the Steelers offense and defensive line has been better in the 2 weeks that we've gone through thus far, better than the Texans. If they continue to be better there and build there, because they played very average against Denver, so they must play better there. If those two areas play terrific for the Steelers, they're too good of a football team to lose this one. And that means it's a clean game. Nobody gets hurt. There's no turnovers, which you can't predict. But it comes down to the trenches for them. If the Steelers do that well and play and cap and build on what they have done, they're the better team. They should win the game.
Okay, Arthur, what's your key?
Now, I love what Merril said, man, in terms of it starting up in the trenches. We know what Deshaun Watson is in terms of trying to contain him and finish the rush on him. And then on the other side, you got J.J. Watt. So without a doubt, the O-line, D-line is going to be pivotal. But for me, man, I'm going to talk about the defensive secondary for the Steelers. We've seen in these first 2 games that they've had lapses from a communication standpoint that have resulted in some of the explosive plays that we've seen from a passing standpoint. When you're looking at this Texans offense, their receivers in terms of Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Randall Kenny Stills, they're good, but they haven't produced on a crazy level this year just yet. I understand, Fuller had 100 yards receiving that first game, but it still didn't seem as impactful as you would have wanted. With the Steelers secondary, if they can just communicate and stay on the same page, that will take away so much more of the diciness of what we've been seeing these first 2 games due to the miscommunication. So for me, man, secondary communicating, staying sharp, that'll be the thing that, to me, will be the biggest reason why the Steelers are victorious on Sunday.
Okay, Pomp, we saved the best for last. What's your key for Sunday?
Well, those are both great points. And those guys know they've been in the trenches. I have not, so they have an advantage over me there. But I will say this, it still comes down to things that you would expect in games like this. Ball possession, field position. And I think both of those are going to be big in this game. So I would expect the Steelers to try really to run the ball and establish that, not throw the ball 16 times in a row as they did in the last game. Try to mix it better, and that's why I think Ebron's going to be a big factor in this game. They will run the ball, and I think they'll have success there, which will open up that part of the game. So it's going to be, for me, it's going to be possession of the football and field position. And, honestly, it's time for a good punting game. I think last week was not so much. And I think that's going to also improve this week. So I'm giving those 2 check marks to the Steelers, Missy.
All right, and cleaning up some penalties, that was another big thing that Coach Tomlin harped on as well. So, guys, thank you so much for your time this week, getting us ready for Steelers versus Texans. That's going to do it for this edition of the Matchup Show presented by Power Home Solar. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next week.